heavens open. Almost a month's worth of rain falls in areas which need it most. But is it enough to break the drought?
Abuse yelled outside court had a man accused of sexually assaulting a 13-year-old boy in his front yard.
A full-scale emergency response after a United Airlines plane puts out a mayday call.
And the big brands slammed for bad behaviour. Who made this year's Shonkies list?
This is NBN News with Lobb and Natasha Beyersdorf.
Good evening. Some have been waiting for years, and finally the heavens have opened, giving our drought-affected farmers some much-needed rain.
The system is starting to move further east as a red haze rolled in over the west this morning.
Into a sea of red. Storms whipping up the outback dust. Relief at last to a dry and desperate land. Broken Hill doubled its rainfall for the year, with 34 millimetres falling overnight. Flooded roads are far in sight. And this morning's trail of destruction almost a welcome one. East of Menindee at Blantyre, the Neville family waited nearly 2 years for their 43 millimetres.
Felt great to sit there and watch it fall and listen to it on the roof. It was fantastic, yeah.
It's a similar story at nearby Carr Station.
Rain's everything. I mean, it's your livelihood. So, and it's just good to see your stock do well. And that's what's important. If your stock are doing well, you're doing well.
The rain band watering the drought-stricken west as it moved towards the coast. Pooncarie recorded the state's top with 53 millimetres. Across the northwest slopes and plains from Burke to Walgett. 18 millimetres for Dubbo. The wet front hitting Orange of Bathurst, developing as it moved east today. The clouds have now rolled in across Sydney, rain settling in for the night.
There could be enough rainfall to produce water over roads. It could be quite gusty, and so that could produce some tree branches down.
It might put a dampener on the school holidays, but for our farmers, it's only the beginning. Julie Snook, NBN News.
In a major pitch to parents, Labor is pledging to extend preschool and kindergarten to 3-year-old children. But the government says taxpayers will bear the multi-billion-dollar cost of the plan.
Education is a numbers game. Labor's pledging to invest more to get kids into school sooner.
We want to hand on a great deal to the next generation of Australians.
Says that from 2021, 3-year-olds will get 15 hours of preschool a week. Adding about 700,000 children to school rolls at a cost of $1.75 billion over the next 4 years. But that's the sum of extending the existing program for 4-year-olds beyond 2019 and kickstarting the plan for 3-year-olds.
If we give our 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds access to preschool education, then we are giving them the best jump start to school.
So the real cost surges when both years are funded over a decade.
At $9.8 billion.
The Prime Minister says Labor's plan is underdone.
My understanding is that sort of funding would have to be matched by the states and territories.
And that extra services have to be funded.
Every time you hear Bill Shorten saying he wants to spend more money, know that you're going to pay for it with higher taxes.
Labor's clearly not trying to be a small target as it runs towards the election. It will roll out plans and try and force the coalition to fight on its turf. And the opposition isn't afraid of saying where it will find the cash.
We're going to pay for our promises by winding back the unfair features of negative gearing.
It will be a long campaign against a Prime Minister prepared to fight street by street. Chris Hillman, NBN News.
The man is free on bail tonight after being charged with raping a 13-year-old boy who he met online. Outraged residents hurled abuse at the 40-year-old who allegedly attacked the teenager in the front yard of his home.
Granted bail for the second time, Mood Nouri stepped out of Penrith Court to head home after being charged with raping a 13-year-old boy. The 40-year-old who works in app and software development didn't say a word.
Do you have any comments about these allegations?
But members of the public watching on couldn't resist.
She'll be locked up and thrown away the key.
That's yourself in, mate! Police allege Mud Nouri had met the child on a social app last Friday. The pair engaged in conversation, exchanged images and personal details and made plans to meet up. The boy later cut the conversation and deleted the app. At 6:45 p.m, Nouri showed up at the boy's home, approaching him in the garden.
Within 24 hours, the person was arrested and now before the courts.
Detectives from the Child Abuse Squad raided Nouri's Kelly on Sunday, charging him with sexual intercourse without consent. Bail at Parramatta the following day. That bail continued after his appearance today in Penrith. His neighbours are only just finding out.
Well, I mean, not knowing, I am absolutely shocked.
Nouri's bail conditions include reporting to police 3 days a week. He must not go near or contact his alleged victim in any way, and he must inform police about any mobile phone he has in his possession. Police are urging parents to closely monitor their child's online movements and who they are talking to.
It's not the apps itself, it's the people that use those apps.
Dozens of Newcastle men are tonight on the street after being evicted from their boarding homes. Newcastle City Council has taken the stern approach due to fire safety issues, but it's left some vulnerable men with no roof over their heads.
Raining, cold, and nowhere to call home.
Where are they going? On the streets. There is nowhere for them to go.
It was built up to be the midnight eviction. 3 boarding houses slapped with non-compliance orders by Newcastle City Council. But in the dead of night at Carrington, nothing but crickets. Come dawn at Mayfield, it was landlord Aaron Buman looking like he'd been evicted before getting to work. Boarding up his Mayfield premises as anxious residents sheltered from the rain, awaiting the outcome of an 11th hour legal challenge.
Guys at the moment don't know where they're going to be. The alternative is the streets. That's it.
The council's orders revolve around fire safety issues. Mr. Buman says he's been working through a solution, but needs another fortnight.
I've tried to make changes wherever I can, but because I'm putting forward sprinklers, it's a very complex issue and I need at least another 14 days to get all that paperwork into council.
But when it's all said and done, this is a story about a landlord and council at loggerheads with real-life consequences. As his business sheltering homeless men has grown, so has his building footprint. The main problem, though, he's never been afraid to test the boundaries.
Well, it's built to standard. Well, put it this way, it's just registered and all I can say is that I've just really never bothered registering it.
There's no doubt this is a compliance issue and Aaron Buman isn't denying he's acted outside council regulations. But at the centre of the problem is 50 to 60 men with nowhere else to turn. For them, this is home. And one of those men is Ken. Parkinson's disease manageable because he has a warm bed at night.
I don't know. Don't want to go back to the place I come from. It's a horrible place.
Unfortunately, reality is if I don't get the 14 days, I'm shut.
And that happened late today. Just as it appeared a legal challenge would buy time, total devastation. One by one the men moved out after inspectors moved in.
They come here earlier to make sure the guys had been leaving, the rooms were empty, and from what they saw, the rooms that they wanted to inspect, blokes aren't here, blokes are out on the streets.
Council has declined to comment, citing legal reasons. Issuing a statement advising the majority of displaced men had found alternative accommodation.
They haven't done anything to house these guys. These guys have had to go in to fax housing last minute and see what can happen. But yeah, most of them will be on the streets.
As Mr. Buman makes one final pitch.
They're not death traps, you know, and just get and understand the impact that your decision has made.
Newcastle Council's statement can be read in full on our website. Stephen Mount, NBN News.
Delays are expected tonight when the Pacific Motorway closes northbound near Freeman's Waterhole, so crews can salvage a truck that ran off the road and down an embankment this afternoon. Northbound drivers will be diverted at the Palmers Road exit from 8 p.m. until around 4 a.m. in the morning.
A man who took an elderly woman hostage outside a Lake Macquarie shopping centre last year could be released from prison before the end of the month. David Clark was sentenced to 22 months jail, making him eligible for parole within weeks. Explains.
David William Clark was today handed a 22-month prison sentence with an 11-month non-parole period, but the 47-year-old could walk free by the end of October. In November last year, Clark confronted a 75-year-old woman outside a Morisset shopping centre, then held her hostage for more than 4 minutes using a 32cm knife he purchased earlier. She was only released when a police officer walked past. The senior constable called for backup, with officers quickly tasering Clark. He pleaded guilty to 5 offences in August, including a fray, common assault and wielding a knife in a public place. Defence solicitor Matthew Unwin today conceded the victim was in the wrong place at the wrong time, but argued Clark was hearing voices and sought care from hospitals on several occasions leading up to the ordeal. Clark wore prison greens and sat quietly during the sentencing. His mother was there for support but wouldn't answer questions leaving court.
Sorry, I'm not talking to anyone. Sorry.
With time already served, Clark will be eligible for parole in just over a fortnight.